I'm Kathy Williamson, and I'm your host for Issues and Insights. And today my guest is Holly Sexton. This is strange.
I know.
You're over there, I'm over here. You know, over the years, we've had swapped roles before, but will you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself? And I hear you have a new gig.
I do, and it's like a Freaky Friday. I'm used to interviewing you behind the mic. I was with Quixie 98.3 for about 15 years with the Greg and Holly show. Interviewed you many, many times on that show.
I loved coming in and talking about the scams and things that were going on with the Better Business Bureau and such. And so now you have a new job, a new gig, and so tell us what you're doing.
Depending on what circle you run in, some people, radio people call it a gig, banking and credit union people call it a career, so I have a new career.
Okay. A new career, okay.
In financial education. There was a House bill that passed recently that Fort Knox Federal Credit Union funded, and then they created a position for someone to coordinate and go into schools and build those relationships and start sharing this program called the EverFi program, which teaches financial literacy. So financial literacy is near and dear to my heart, and I grew up in a family that did not have financial education, and some of the choices that they made impacted our lives greatly. And so I can see both sides. I can see how it impacts people in a positive way to have financial education, and the other side too. And so that's why it's near and dear to my heart. And also we get to meet people who have real questions and real problems and real life situations that can be solved with a plan with financial literacy. So I like that it is black and white. You can make good choices, and you can see the good things that will come from those choices. So I really like the metric of that. So anyway, I retired from the Quixie Morning Show with Brian Walker and started this job 3 weeks ago. So you'll see me referencing some notes because it's some of it is pretty new.
Well, let's start talking back about the bill 139. Give our viewers some background on how that came about, some of the folks that spearheaded it, and what the need was. You know, we always make the assumption if there's a bill that goes before our legislatures that there was a need, there was an identified need. And so kind of talk a little bit about how that came to be on our books.
Well, there were several players in that, including a local, Jim Duplessis. But Kentucky Treasurer Allison Ball and the Kentucky Education Commissioner, who is Wayne Lewis, they showed support for House Bill 139 in Kentucky, and it's called the Financial Empowerment Commission Bill. It's a bill that made financial literacy courses in Kentucky schools mandatory. So now, before you leave a financial or an educational institution in Kentucky, if it is public, you will take some sort of financial education program.
But this is 12 through K. Now, we were talking a little bit before we went on air about how our higher education and our community colleges already have this piece.
Well, they do, and Fort Knox Federal Credit Union has had that in place, also with Junior Achievement. They've been doing it. They've been educating people from elementary to higher ed for a while, but it wasn't mandatory.
There's the difference.
There's the difference, and my position didn't exist at the time, and it was just like, where can we fill in the gaps? Well, now we know, due to research, that we need it in all steps, from early childhood education to middle school to high school, and then higher ed, and then ongoing. So that's the difference. But we know schools were facing funding challenges when this House bill went through, and so there was no way to pay for it. So the bill went through, and that's where Jim Duplessis comes in. Jim Duplessis is from Elizabethtown, and he sponsored House Bill 139, and the question went out, how are we going to fund it? Well, credit unions all over the Commonwealth came together and said, let's pay for this. We see the value in it. We can pool our resources and pool our money and pay for a platform curriculum that goes into the schools. And so here I am.
So that's how you got your position. And so you're going out now. We talked a little bit again before we went online about the differences in banking today to maybe 25, 30 years ago. You know, some of the things that we saw with the Better Business Bureau is how credit is so easily accessible to our students and to our young folks. And so we talked about a little bit about how I mentioned the debit cards and how quickly folks' money goes in and out of their accounts, to the point. I remember as a teenager and a young adult that I had a ledger. I had a checkbook.
Yes, you had a checkbook, and also you had cash.
Yes,
I'm sure
I had some cash. But I would have to, with the checkbook, I would have to sit down and keep a running balance.
Yes.
Every so often, I would have to sit and add or subtract, add my deposits, subtract my checks, so that I would know what I had in my bank account.
Pretty basic math.
And there were ramifications for overdrawing, like you wouldn't let you keep using checks if you didn't have the money in the bank. But the world is different now.
It is.
Now with the different products that banks and credit unions have, the debit card just makes the money so easy.
Yeah, it's the intangible factor for sure with up-and-comers and apps. Now, I love apps, and I love financial apps, and I use them daily. But you're right, that lack of a ledger can sometimes cause our teens and our young adults to not make good choices because they can't see it on paper, or they're not doing the adding and subtracting. And you know, when you write that check down that you wrote, that even if it hasn't cleared yet,
you know that money is accounted for.
Yes, you know that
there's
money's
the difference.
gone.
That money
so
is accounted for, and so you don't spend it again.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And there's no surprises.
And there's no surprises, and the check clears, and your bills get paid, and all of that. Wherein today, I have children and I have grandchildren that are in that debit card world, and you know, today, as long as it swipes and goes and I get my cup of coffee, I'm good to go.
But you may pay, say you get coffee and a scone, you may pay $7 for that, but then it hits your account, and then you have to pay a $32 overdraft
there's all
fee
sorts
in
of things
addition.
that those are the ramifications of overspending.
Sure.
Is because my financial institution has all of these things that have to be put in place for good reason to keep me from doing that.
Yes.
And so, but it just makes it's Holly, it's that instant world. It's that instant wanting that cup of coffee and that scone. And a lot of times it's a routine or it's a habit. And so we see
it is habit.
It's habit.
And habits start early.
We see young folks, you know, at the end of their high school years doing that. We see folks going into our community colleges, folks going into our four-year colleges, you know, with that mindset. And my gosh, with the cell phones and all of that, I see my grandchildren online, buying games, adding points and things, and that same sort of thing going on at a lot younger age than, say, my generation, because of technology and all of that. So the whole thing here is that it's more and more reason to help them make smarter choices younger and younger, because they do have access.
Yes.
They have cell phones. They may not have debit cards in our elementary schools, but they have cell phones.
That's an excellent point, because those habits do start early, and that's with the use of iPads, cell phones, technology, smartphones, that kind of thing, apps, etc. So we know that these are intelligent, savvy app users.
Absolutely.
And so being able to be relevant to them, but also providing them with what they need in early childhood education and on through ongoing education. And that's part of our mission with other credit unions across the state and with EverFi is there's a platform for all of those stages. So you've got elementary, you have middle, high school, higher education, and then we even have modules on our website. And when I first started 3 weeks ago, I sat down and really got to know those modules. And there were some reminders in there. There were some life experiences I was able to reflect on and saying, I wish I knew. And yesterday when we were at ECTC with the FYE program, which is also required now in higher ed, all students coming in, whether you're a non-traditional or traditional student, FYE's first year experience. And part of that is financial education. So Chuck Eads led the students through the basics, and what they wanted to talk about was credit. I thought they'd want to talk about student loans, they wanted to talk about car loans, and they wanted to talk about credit.
Okay.
Those were the two big points for them.
Okay, so credit cards so that they can get things that they don't have money in their account for.
Yes, and we talked
Instant
about needs and wants.
gratification of being able to go ahead and purchase it, get it delivered, but then they don't have the background and the budgeting skills to put money back every month to pay the note or to pay the credit card. They probably don't have the experience of what the interest rate, how the interest rate is going to affect the balance.
Yes, they weren't familiar with any of that, and every student in that classroom had not had any sort of financial education growing up. So I thought that was really interesting. Overwhelmingly, no hands went up when the question was asked, did you have financial literacy education? And none of them had. So we're doing our best on the back end now, but starting in 2020, it will become mandatory.
Well, we even think about credit scores and how choices that they're making today, if they were to get a credit card at ECTC, and they don't handle that credit correctly, how that credit will follow them, how that bad credit score will follow them, and even the financial aid piece. If they default on their financial aid pieces, if their student loans or their grants, well, not the grants because they wouldn't pay those back, but how that will follow them. I bet if you had asked the question, if any in the group knew what their credit score was, they would have probably taken the position, I don't have a credit score.
Chuck Eads did ask that question, and a few knew their credit score, but they didn't know why their credit score was what it was and what it means. And you also mentioned making decisions that could affect their credit score. Well, you don't know what you don't know. So without passing judgment on these young students, and that's what FYE is for, that's why first year experience is there, is to say, hey, you may not be aware, but the things that you're doing right now are going to affect you in the next 10 years on your credit score. And then Chuck went over what a credit score is and the big three. What makes up, when you check your credit score, where all of that is coming from.
The three credit bureaus.
The three credit bureaus and where that is coming from. And I love that you mentioned that it used to be covert. It used to be
we talked about that online because, again, with my banking experience, it was very, they didn't share that information with you. They didn't, as a consumer, they didn't really want to share what made up your credit score and how it was affected, because that way they kind of had you there. But now it's totally open, and there are actual apps where you can daily go look at your credit. You don't want to do that, because I remember the difference in hard hits and soft hits on your credit score. But again, and so you mentioned credit cards, and you also mentioned auto loans. So
because they need transportation.
Your credit card, how you handle your credit card can directly affect whether or not you get a car loan, and what your interest rate might be at that financial institution because of your credit score.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So it's the start.
It is.
And a while ago when we were mentioning about iPhones and things like that, as elementary kids, if they get in trouble because they've been on a site, they've probably got mom and dad's debit card or credit card, and so they'll get in trouble with mom and dad and maybe get their phone turned off and something like that. But there comes really early where what you're doing is connected to you moving forward.
Yes, for sure.
And so again, so it makes a lot of sense to go talk to the kids in elementary school and let them, and even if nothing, let them understand why mom and dad get so upset when you've hit their account and you've overdrawn it for these games or these points or whatever it is. And then maybe when the circumstance brings it home again and they're having the conversation, they'll think, oh, now I know why mom and dad's so upset.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in my research the past few weeks, I've found that money and talking about finances can be a really touchy subject for families. And sometimes parents and guardians don't have those conversations. So, or some people will say, well, it's rude to talk about money at the dinner table. Well, sometimes at the dinner table is the only time that you have to have those conversations. So inadvertently, as a single parent, I've talked to my son since he was small about money. Or if he wanted something, instead of saying, no, you can't have it, I will say, and now he asks me, he goes, do you have enough money in your bank account for me to get that? So inadvertently,
Sounds like you taught him well, but that's okay.
But I didn't know at the time that I was doing something positive. So I highly encourage, no matter the way you were raised or with what mentality, that you have those conversations with your kids. And again, it doesn't have to be a sit down and super serious. It can be over breakfast, or it can be when you're riding in the car together, or just those organic conversations about money, or including them when you make choices, when you go to buy a car, or you go to maybe you're house shopping, and you look at mortgages. Taking your kid along so they can experience it and learn by doing, and know that, hey, you're an adult and you're in charge, but also at the same time, you have to really weigh your decisions, especially your big financial decisions. And when your kids see that, that is so impactful. And if you don't know how to have those conversations, there are modules on our website at fortknoxfcu.org, and you can go through those modules if you want to. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, set your kid up on a tablet, go to the website, and let them go through the module themselves. And it's interactive. There's a quiz at the beginning and at the end to measure knowledge and increase in knowledge. And it's done in a way that is relevant, and it is current, and it talks a lot about plastics.
Well, you know,
which you've talked a lot about
and
today.
What I'm sitting here thinking about it is the generational differences.
Yes.
You know, when we're talking to workforce development folks, we learn about how there's never in the history of has there been this many different generations in the same workforce.
Oh, and you can feel it in the workspace
and
too.
how you have to relate to different age groups, and they've all got titles and they've all got characteristics. Well, not only that in the workforce, but also in how house management is done.
Yes.
My dad took care of the bills. My mom did work or didn't work, and so, but it's a different mindset now.
Yeah, who does it and how they do it, and are they successful at it? And if you're not modeling that for your kids, it's okay. Yes. There are tools to get started with that. Like just yesterday, I learned about Google products, which are free, where you can create spreadsheets. It sounds pretty basic, but some people aren't doing that. So your spreadsheet now is the equivalent to your checkbook.
To your checkbook. Yeah. Okay. And again, you've got
and it's digital. It travels with you, or you can print it out.
But it's still visual.
Tangible paper. Yeah.
It's still visual. You can still have a beginning balance. Add your deposits. Take out your checks or your credits, and have a running total.
Yes, and focus on savings. And that's something that we see overwhelmingly. It's like when people try to start an eating plan. We know overwhelmingly, because the research tells us that if people track their calories or track their food, or track their micronutrients, that they will be successful in losing weight and being healthy. Well, we know the same thing in financial literacy and financial education, and financial wellness is the same thing as tracking food.
Being held accountable?
Being held accountable.
That's exactly and what came to mind when you were talking about the diet. Because if I'm writing down that I'm having a chocolate shake, and I'm being held accountable.
Yes, I had French fries with cheese on them.
My actions, I'm being held accountable for my actions.
Sure.
And the same sort of thing. And you know, we used to talk about paying yourself first.
Yes.
Putting some money aside. You were talking about the savings. Because that was what I was taught, was that, you know, yes, you work, yes, you have bills, but you have to put away for your future. You have to put away for your fun fund.
Your fun fund.
Your fun fund.
Your fun money.
Your fun money, because you can't be work all the time.
That's right.
And you have to have a little bit of money put back, so that if you do want to go to the movies, or you do want to go do something, you have money to enjoy the benefits of your work. And that's how we kind of went through with family time, and having we always put a little money away for that.
Yeah.
And so, but again, the world has changed. You know, the dynamics have changed. There's a lot of
there's fewer nuclear families for sure, and we know that we have over 10,000 foster kids in our in Kentucky. So we know that the family dynamic looks a lot different than it did 25 years ago.
But we owe these kids.
We do, absolutely.
We need to teach these kids so that they don't repeat, so that they can, and they're the ones that are responsible for having a different future.
You're right, but it's our job absolutely to equip them, and that's a perfect segue.
Okay,
Thank you
so
for bringing that up.
let's talk about EverFi.
Yes, EverFi is, and this is exciting too because I took the financial education position and started at Fort Knox Federal Credit Union, and I thought, oh, I hope they have a strong platform, and then I got into EverFi really deep, and I was like, yes, I was really excited.
This makes a lot of sense.
It does, and it's a strong platform.
Share with us some of the screenshots and such.
And we'll show some slides for this.
Okay.
The EverFi Financial Literacy Program is one that is all over the United States, and they know the need for financial education. We know that there's a deep lack of understanding. 1 in 5 American high school students lack basic financial skills. That's from looking at a pay stub and interpreting that to avoiding being tricked into sharing online banking information, whether that be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
We
that
hadn't
kind of
even
thing.
talked about the pay stub side.
Missing family support. 69% of parents have some reluctance about discussing financial matters for whatever reason. Some of it is that they just don't know how. Role of financial education. So we know that financial education programs benefit 100% of students. We know that. We know it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
So that's why the House bill was a no-brainer to do it, but it was just funding it. It was the really hard part. So we're thankful for the founders of that bill. Why did the credit union pick EverFi? Well, they wanted to demystify financial literacy. It's relatable to everyday life, as we mentioned. It focuses on important everyday financial decision makings. It also is interactive, so they take a little quiz at the beginning, and then they do the module, and then at the end, they take another quiz to show what they learned and what they've retained.
You know, I may look at this and say, well, that doesn't apply to me.
Right, and you know, the elementary education EverFi program probably wouldn't apply to you, but an after-school program or K through 5th grade, which 4th and 5th grade is our primary audience in elementary school.
Okay.
EverFi Financial Literacy, it's immersive, it's diverse, so even the animations that you'll see in there shows diversity. You'll learn through problem solving, and so they give you real-life scenarios that you have to work through. And self-reflection, how does it apply to you? If you go through course topics, that includes banking basics, which we talked about, budgeting, consumer skills, and even insurance. You're like, how can that be interesting to a kid or elementary school student? They break it down in a way that is relatable for that age group. Also middle school and high school. This is the high school. What I'm showing in these slides is a digital experience schedule for high schools.
Okay.
In July, the program will include banking basics, income and employment, budgeting, and credit and debt. And again, our high school seniors, sophomore, junior, seniors, and our first year experience students in college are asking about plastics. They're asking about that, and they're asking about auto loans primarily. The digital experience in October for those high school students includes consumer skills and financing higher education. Shocker. That's a conversation that's happening with a lot of high school students, parents, high school. If they're talking about finances, they're talking about how are you going to pay for college or technical school or whatever you want to do.
So that's your financial aid piece.
That's your financial aid piece, yep. And we'll go through the modules quickly. There's banking basics, and from beginning to end in that is what kind of money manager are you? So again, that quiz portion and then the activity at the end. Everyone has a post-assessment. Module 2 is income and employment. And then we have budgeting, really important, right? Module 4, because this is still being created and will go into place in 2020. Module 4 is investing in yourself, which is what you were just talking about.
Well, maybe in more layman terms, and I didn't have any pretty slides, but it was instilled.
Yes,
it absolutely was.
And then credit and debt. And then finishing up with the crosswalk with the objectives. And I know we only have a few minutes left, and we'll see some Vault program slides up there as well, Kathy. Vault is the elementary. So what you just saw was the high school.
Okay.
And then the slides can go up for the Vault program for elementary. and then I will finish up with learners in our community. So how did it turn out?
Is that your did we talk about some adult modules?
Yes, and I'll tell you about those in just a few minutes. But just a recap of what Fort Knox Federal Credit Union, Becky Yates and her team were able to do. As soon as it passed, she was like, let's do it. So,
absolutely.
And I loved that. So they reached over 807 students, 7 schools, and over 1,400 hours of learning. And that included Bardstown Middle, TK Stone Middle School, Grayson County, David T. Wilson, H.W. Wilkie Elementary, Orrin P. Lawler, and Clarkson Elementary, and coming to Hardin County Schools.
Yes.
We meet with them later this month, and we will get that in Hardin County Schools for all the 5th graders.
Good deal.
In Hardin County Schools.
Absolutely.
So we're excited about that.
Absolutely.
So thank you for letting me go through my slides.
Absolutely. Adults.
Adults, yes.
Because we're out of school.
Yes.
We're young adults. We have young families.
We do.
There are modules for that as well?
There are. Financial education does not stop in the schools. If you go to FortKnoxFCU.org to the website, if you click on the Education and Tools tab, you can get started there. It's free for everyone. Okay. I highly recommend going through the modules. There's over 12. And you can take your time with them. You can take them over again. But the whole goal is to learn and to apply. And we do have some tools on the credit union website as well, where you can make your own budget. So you can get started there. You can also check interest rates on vehicles. There's all kinds of scenario and gameplay there where you can just play around and see what works for you.
So I'm sort of thinking about the young couple that's made some poor choices, and now they're ready to make a life investment in a house, a vehicle, something like that. And we all know you can do things to improve your credit score.
Yes.
You can, and so I'm thinking this might be a great place for them to go and kind of take some assessments, kind of see some of the things they've done right, maybe some of the things they need to polish and do a little better next time.
Indeed.
To get themselves in a better position before they go start and asking for mortgages or credit, car loans and those sort of life-changing things. Sounds like this would be a great place for those folks to kind of tweak a little bit and kind of take an objective look.
Yes, that's. I'm thrilled you said that. Taking an objective look is a big part of growing. And if you can go to FortKnoxFCU.org and go through the Education and Tools tab and be objective about it, I think that you can really start to see how those changes can impact your everyday life and your goals in a positive way. It's possible. It's very possible.
And that's being proactive.
Yes.
And that's something that we need to all be, is proactive instead of going and making an application and being turned down, and then having that judgment and having all of that. Go do some of that up front in advance. Get yourself in the best place you can be, and then move forward with your goals.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, we ran into yesterday, a very similar situation to what you mentioned. I gave this young woman my card, and I said, why don't you go into a branch and talk to someone and get a little, like a personal trainer for fitness, get a personal trainer for financial education, same thing. So sometimes just asking those questions, getting some answers, and then laying out your plan and working, that's the thing, you have to work your plan.
You have to work your plan.
You work your plan, but I highly suggest going to the website, going through the Education and Tools.
Holly, this has been wonderful.
Thank
you so much for coming and telling us all about this program and giving us a few minutes of your time here. We really appreciate you doing this, and hopefully our viewers will take heed to some of it, and maybe we will have sparked something in some folks that we're going to have that conversation around their table tonight.
Oh, I hope so. Please do. Talk about it.
Your contact information again?
You can find me. I'm Holly Sexton, and I'm at FortKnoxFCU.org. Thank you for having me.
That's our segment of Issues and Insight. Kathy Williamson, thank you.